and a Russian Youth Conference by Eurasian Foundation. This conference actually was started by Professor Arun Mohanty, who was the founding father and architect of this foundation. The idea behind this conference is to bring all the young minds of India and Russia into a single platform and listen their thoughts and aspirations, which will be contribute to strengthen our relationship. The this third conference actually was planned by Professor Arun Mohanty due to his illness, and in the last leg of his life, he did not actually organize this conference. Now this is the I think this is the great tribute to him, where all his friends and all the friends and well wishers are here in the both inaugural and valedictory session. I think he would be happy to for this conference. In the last 2 days and today, we had very fruitful technical deliberations by young research scholars from University of Oriental Studies, Moscow State University, MGMO, Lift Tech State Pedagogical University, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Mumbai University, Kashmir University, Jadavpur University, Kerala Central University, Pondicherry Central University, and participants from different universities. We had 24 well written research papers. All are presented well. Thoughts and really its thoughts are very appreciable, and definitely will try to bring out one published volume out of these papers. Really, it was good papers. I am happy to announce here that more than 350 academicians and other policymakers from Bangladesh, China, including India, Kazakhstan, Philippines, Russia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, United Kingdom, and Uzbekistan have been participating in this conference. I'm very happy to see all these people. In the inaugural session, Sri V. Muralidharanji, Honorable Minister of State, Minister of External Affairs, and Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Government of India, had sent their video message and encouraged to our participants. Apart from that, His Excellency Mr. Nikolai Kudasek, His Excellency Ambassador D.B. Venkatesh Verma, Professor Sanjay Pandey, Professor Sergei Lonev, Ivanovich, Professor Fedor Rozhevsky, Professor Fulbadan, Professor Sanjay Deshpande joined as a speaker, and it was very fruitful and deliberative the session. This session was chaired by Professor Ajay Patnaik, and a vote of thanks given by Mistress Namita Mohanty, the director of this Eurasian Foundation. Now may I request Professor Archana Upadhyay to chair this valedictory session. Before chairing to this session, I just need to give some small introduction. Professor Archana Upadhyay is a very senior professor currently working at the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, India. She has been the recipient of the Commonwealth Academic Staff Fellowship with affiliation to the International Policy Institute, King's College London, UK, and her research interests include intersectoral relations and foreign policy with the strong focus on South Asia, Russia, and Eurasian issues. Her latest research work under religion in post-Soviet societies, her previous publications, so many publications, main publications related to Russia and all the Eurasian regions. She was a visiting professor in the European Commission project in social performance and cultural trauma, re-establishment of solid sovereignties in the University of Toronto, Estonia, visiting fellow to Latvia, Kazakhstan, so many experiences, wide experience in academic activities in different foreign universities. She is a member of the so many editorial boards and all. We are happy to, and we are great honor, Professor. She is with us and agreed to chair this session. Really, we are thankful to you, ma'am. Now I would request to chair this session. Over to you, ma'am. Professor Archana Upadhyay.
Thank you, sir. So very good afternoon to my Russian friends, colleagues and students, and a very good evening to my Indian friends, colleagues and students. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this 3-day Indo-Russian Young Scholars International Conference 2020 on India-Russia domestic and bilateral developments, particularly the director of the Eurasian Foundation, Mrs. Namita Mahanti, thank you, ma'am, and the Deputy Director of the Foundation, Dr. Sumant, for giving me this opportunity to chair the concluding session of this very, very interesting, conference. I noticed that we have an impressive list of speakers, reputed scholars, academics, and foreign policy practitioners. And I dare say that all of them are votaries of the vision of Eurasianism, the central concepts of which include civilizational originality, characterized by traditional values, which also includes religiosity, multi-ethnicity, inter-ethnic tolerance, a strong state, and the concept of a world order that endorses multipolarity and plurality of civilizations. Let me begin by extending my warm greetings to my Russian friends on the occasion of Moscow City Day celebrations, a festivity that Moscow traditionally celebrates during the first weekend in September. Here in India, of course, as some of you already mentioned, that 5th September marks a very important occasion as we celebrate the day as Teachers' Day to mark the birthday of the second President of India, S. Radhakrishnan. Now, Radhakrishnan, of course, we all know, a noted scholar, philosopher, a Bharat Ratna awardee, was born on 5th September 1888. In the context of India-Russian ties, particularly in the context of laying the foundations of this relationship, Radhakrishnan's role has been remarkable. As the second Indian ambassador to the Soviet Union, succeeding Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, who was the sister of Jawaharlal Nehru, and that was in the last few years of what we understand as Stalin's era, Radhakrishnan played a very significant role in impressing upon the Soviet leadership India's vision and worldview on critical global issues. The task clearly was not easy because impressing Stalin was never easy. But nonetheless, he did achieve in charting out a course for a relationship that was to reach legendary heights in the years to come. In that sense, Radhakrishnan's role has been remarkable. Since this conference is the Young Scholars Conference, I would like to read out a brief extract from a speech delivered by President Radhakrishnan on August 24, 1962 at Jodhpur University. His message to the youth continues to be as relevant today as it was then in 1962. In his words, and I quote, "The youth are there for the purpose of entering into world consciousness, world understanding, world history. They have to dedicate themselves to the great pursuit of extending the boundaries of knowledge, contributing to science and scholarship. It is my hope, my honest desire, that young people will go forward not as prisoners of the past, but as pilgrims of the future, with single-minded concentration on the advancement of knowledge, whether in science or humanities," unquote. So let us dedicate this session to the memory of the great scholar, thinker, philosopher, and educationist, Radhakrishnan ji. And in this particular session, I notice we have 6 speakers, and I believe we need to wind up within an hour, isn't it? Sumant?
It depends upon you.
No. Of course, it depends upon you. So each speaker would have about 8 minutes to speak. Is it okay, sir? Mukherjee, sir, it's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So the first speaker is Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, and he needs no introduction, but in any case, I would just give a brief introduction, a former diplomat and permanent representative of India to the United States. Besides that, he's also a scholar. He's written extensively on a whole variety of subjects, particularly issues pertaining to Eurasia. So may I invite you, sir, to share your thoughts with us? Please, sir.
Thank you, Professor Upadhyay. That is a very kind introduction. First, I must, of course, thank Namita ji, and the chair of the Eurasian Foundation, and my dear friend, Dr. Suman Swain, who have really worked so hard to make sure that the vision that Professor Arun Mohanty introduced into our lives continues and continues to grow. And I'm happy to be part of this journey that we are now embarked on together. The third conference, I've seen the titles of the papers and heard Dr. Swain's report. It has probably come up to the expectations that the organizers had and that the participants had of identifying and looking at the areas where India-Russia relations can benefit from the contribution of young scholars who are gathered here. But I take your invitation, Professor Upadhyay, and turn a little to Dr. Radhakrishnan, because as you said, he was a seminal figure, not only for India's relations with the Soviet Union, but before that, he was part of the Committee on Intellectual Cooperation under the League of Nations and India's first ambassador to UNESCO.
Yes.
And I think that his vision, which he encapsulated in a phrase called unity of mankind, is something that really is relevant more today than ever before, because we are at a point of international relations where a big churning is going on, polarization is taking place, confrontations are there, and we need to address this challenge to our common future by recalling Dr. Radhakrishnan's emphasis on the unity of mankind. And the other thing that I remember about Dr. Radhakrishnan's stay in Moscow, and that is from our files in our embassy in Moscow, is that he spent a lot of time actually translating the Bhagavad Gita into English. And if you look at the first edition of his translation of the Bhagavad Gita, it is date-lined Moscow. And that's a very interesting fact, which I discovered when looking at those old papers. And I hope that scholars will actually do much more to place that work of Dr. Radhakrishnan into the larger work that he did to create the foundation for the unity of mankind and for our shared common destiny. This is an important tribute we would like to pay to him on today, which is his birthday and Teachers' Day in India. Now, in terms of the discussions that have been held, I think that they have put emphasis on the role of young scholars to expand awareness of each other in each other's countries, awareness of Russia in India and awareness of India and Russia. And this awareness is, in addition to it builds also on equally strong foundations of the work done by Indologists in Russia, of whom, of course, the legendary Gerasim Lebedev is probably the first. But I see on the screen today eminent Indologists, some of whom I've had the good fortune to know and meet when I was working in Russia. And we have to build on their work. But young scholars, I think, need to go beyond that to actually look at the new Russia that is emerging and the new India that is emerging. And this is something that is critical because we continue to have a lot of interaction in areas of language, religion, culture, ethnicity, as you have mentioned, and as the papers themselves have talked about. But we need to bring all of it into a holistic perspective. And I think that this will be a very big contribution to the cooperation between India and Eurasia, which you spoke about, Professor Upadhyay, because in India today, the concept of Eurasia in the general public is very hazy. And I think that young scholars should devote some of their activities to providing the general audience in India especially with what is meant by Eurasia and what does this concept have in store for work to be done by them as academics, but also for the wider stakeholder participation of businesses and of cultural activists, artists, etc. Now, there are two things that I think I would like to point to when I look at the future contribution of young scholars from both our countries. The first is the convergence between Eurasia and the Indian Ocean. Since 2015, India has embarked on a gradual assertion of a maritime identity. And in that, the policy framework has been put in place in March 2015 with a policy called Security and Growth for All in the Region, or SAGAR, which translates into ocean in Hindi. So I think what we need to do is have a focus on how can we connect Eurasia with SAGAR. And this is something that that has enough in it. It's such a broad topic that scholars from different disciplines can contribute to this attempt to build bridges between Eurasia and India, between Eurasia and SAGAR. Because sitting here in Delhi, most of us know that the ocean is very far away, and most of us probably never think about the maritime issues. But if you look at the world at large, the maritime domain is central to the whole issue of security as well as sustainable development. And I think that we need a partnership with Russia to fully realize the potential that lies in this sector. And the second area that I think young scholars can look at profitably to focus on is cooperation between Russia and India in the digital domain, in the cyber domain. A beginning has been made following the Sochi summit with interaction between Sirius, the establishment in Sochi, and the Atal Innovation Mission here in India. 50 students not long ago, a few weeks ago, interacted and presented their work to the political leaders of our two countries. That is a beginning. But I think that beyond that, we need to connect the younger generation's bandwidth, if I may call it that, their technological existence, that dimension, which was not there for my generation. My generation was used to pen and paper, and then we moved to telexes and faxes and then emails, and that's where we were. But today's generation is digital. And I think that this is something that young scholars are very well placed, because people like me are not able to give the specific directions on where this will go, but they are living through this. And I think it is to them that we look forward to connect Russia and India through the digital ecosystem that is being built in front of our eyes. And I would like to conclude by mentioning three challenges. The first challenge to all this work that we need to do is the lack of direct contacts between our two countries, between scholars of our two countries. I'm aware that institutions have tried to encourage contacts, but there is, compared to India's contacts with some of the other major strategic partners, there's a lack of similar intensity of contacts at all levels and in all disciplines. And I think that we need to overcome this lack of direct contacts. And I think the Eurasia Foundation can do a very big favor to the India-Russia strategic partnership by facilitating and expanding direct contacts between India and Russia. The second is to play a role. I think young scholars in India and Russia should play a role in overcoming the imposition of third-party perspectives and agendas on our bilateral relations. It is a pity that not a single Indian correspondent today is living and working in Moscow. It is a great shock. But I think that young scholars should probably use this as an opportunity to try and use the digital technologies and opportunities that are available to become the digital correspondents of India and Russia and India. This is something that I think is very important, because the strategic partnership always faces the challenge of being pressurized by perspectives and agendas of third countries. And I think that it's important for us to have direct exchanges between our two countries and people, rather than having a large amount of people in at least India and probably in Russia being given information about each other through third sources. And the third challenge I think that lies ahead is to identify, as young scholars, the opportunities that exist for skilled personnel who are graduating from our universities and educational institutions in each other's countries. I think that this is something that can play a very important role in explaining what is possible, what is needed in each other's countries. And I mention this because in both Russia and India, we have very ambitious plans of self-reliance, of building and rebuilding our socio-economic systems with our own resources. India's most sort of well-known has been articulated most recently as Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India. So young scholars in India probably can have an opportunity to explain to their counterparts in Russia what are the main directions of this new program in India, which is behind the creation of a new India, and where can Russia and Russian skilled people play a role in India. We have seen in two sectors this is happening already, in defense and in energy. But we need to go beyond defense and beyond energy and go to all the other areas. So with these words, I would like to thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to address this conference. And I wish all of you the best of luck and reassure you that anytime you need a person like me, I am there to be with you hand in hand as we go on this journey together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Mukherjee, for this very rare insights that you gave into the lives and times of Radhakrishnan, particularly, much before he was even the ambassador of Indian ambassador to Russia. And in fact, I agree that, what is needed, New Russia and New India actually requires holistic perspectives on a whole range of issues. And the fact that we need to go beyond cooperation in energy and other so-called conventional sectors, and the fact that you have mentioned about, cooperation in the digital arena, and most importantly, the ability to, rely on one's own wisdom and resources rather than relying on third-party perspectives and interpretation of where our relationships lie. And most importantly, when you say that, the convergence between Eurasia and the maritime domain is one area that needs to be studied by researchers on both sides, And so yes, you in fact, you have given a lot of ideas to our young scholars on the areas where they can actually pursue their research, start reading and also writing. Thank you so much, Ambassador Mukherjee.
Thank you.
Now I request the second speaker, Professor Vladimir Kulikov. He's the director of the International Institute for Social and Economic Studies and is an expert on Russian international affairs. May I request you, sir, to kindly speak to us and share your thoughts with our participants? Yes, Professor Kulikov. Is he there? Suman?
Yes, I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think ma'am she's not here, ma'am.
So should I invite?
Proceed. Yes. Maybe she's maybe
invite the
join later. Yes, ma'am.
Should I invite the next speaker?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah. The next speaker needs no introduction. She is one of the greatest friend of, modern India or contemporary India, if I can say so. She is she's Professor Eugenia Vanina. And I've had the privilege of knowing her as a personal friend of not just India and Indians, particularly my institution, that is the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. In fact, she's friends with the whole of JNU. So it's such a pleasure to welcome her, and it's always such a delight to listen to her. May I invite Professor Eugenia to speak to us, share her thoughts on the main theme of the conference.
Thank you. It's very hard for me to say thank you, dear chairperson, because I'm also talking to my very, very, very dear friend. And there are many of my friends in this audience. One even is my boss and at the same time my friend. There is my classmate in this audience also. And there are so many good friends whom I met and whom I will be meeting. And I would like to say just a few words about this conference in one context. It's a conference of young scholars, and it's a very, very good idea because you know, it's for them. Maybe I'm saying very ordinary and banal things. It's for them to carry on our partnership and our friendship. Let them take from us, let them learn from the preceding generation. They may be very skeptical. They may say, "Arey, ye to bhai ka zamana tha. Ab bhai nahi chalta. There is no bhai now. It's pragmatism." I would welcome them to show their pragmatism and to show to which extent it goes. We know how it was in bhai times. We know how it was after bhai times. So I wish young scholars be successful in showing that without bhai, or maybe with a new kind of bhai, they will carry this forward. They will bring their clear young brains, their romantic souls. Tell me whatever you like. They can talk about their pragmatism from morning to night, but I know that they're all romantics inside. So let them bring their own romanticism. But we need young scholars to develop our cooperation. Why? Because we need this cooperation. What I say we does not mean Prime Minister Modi or President Putin or somebody else from the leadership. Our countries need it because leaderships are here and there, leaderships change, politics are changing, but our countries need each other as friends, as allies, as partners in various fields, and at the same time as sources of experience. I was very pleased to learn that some of the papers read in this conference were attempts of comparative study of India and Russia. Why we need such comparative studies? Not because Indians want Russians to advise them on their problems and vice versa. There was a question what India should do with ethnic conflicts, with religious discord or whatever. Only Indians know what should they do. Only Indians can decide how to deal with this or that problem. But what we can do is we can share our experience and compare it. Both experience of both good and bad consequences, positive and negative. Because if I go to the forest and see a snake, I will tell my friend, don't go there because there is a snake. So let us study each other's mistakes as well. But for these comparative studies, what we need is equal knowledge of both compared subjects. Am I heard?
Yes, yes.
Yes, of both studies that we compare. Let it not be that one side is very well known because a scholar belongs to this country, and another side is known by this or that publications from the Western press of this homophobia problem and this kind of thing. Let it be equally known to the scholar, which he or she tries to compare. Why this or this happens? What is the reaction? What is the social situation? What is the public opinion? Which can be known from studying the situation in the country which you are trying to compare. I would like to wish young scholars who have participated in this conference, remember it as an experience in bringing together our knowledge of India and Indian knowledge of Russia, in creating an atmosphere for our cooperation. This atmosphere starts with knowledge. And I fully agree with Dr. Mukherjee, Ambassador Mukherjee, who said that we need knowledge about each other. And a young scholars may be very helpful in this matter. That Russians should know about India something more than about Bollywood. And Indians should know about Russia something more than vodka and this kind of thing, bears and all these kind of funny things. So, and the young scholars who are very fluent in, as Ambassador Mukherjee has said, in these cyber things, they can talk to their generation in the language this generation understands. For example, every year, groups of JNU students and other students from India come to Moscow for their practical course. Let them have blogs. Let them show the life of students, the life of common people. And the same applies to the Russian students who go to India every time, everywhere. And every day, show the everyday life of the Indian people, not just Taj Mahal, not just Agra Fort, but life of various strata of Indian people. Because we need, and let me end with a small repetition, we need each other. And if we go to history, our countries were very far from each other, very unfamiliar to each other. But if we speak about history, we see as we stretched our hands looking for each other through the ages, across the borders, across the geographical spaces. We were coming to each other on the camels, on the horseback, on God knows what, on the ships, losing, being killed, but still coming, stretching hands across. It means that some truth of history, some necessity for both of us were felt, even if nobody could explain what this necessity is. It could start with the necessity for Indian spices and come to the necessity of translating Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Kalidasa into Russian. It could be like that, no problem, no problem. But we were stretching hands through geographical spaces to join them. And since we have joined them, I think we shall support each other in all spheres of life, be it economy, be it trade, be it culture, be it politics, geopolitics. And I wish all our friends a great success in this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Vanina. We need each other. That's such a powerful statement, and I can't agree with you more. And I do agree when you say that there is need for people-to-people engagement at all levels, particularly among our young people, about sharing experiences, both good and bad, despite the so-called pragmatism that has come to define our relationship. And there are people who do say that the emotional component of the relationship that existed during the Soviet times does not exist anymore. Of course, we can debate it endlessly. But the truth is that among scholars, particularly young scholars, there is this pressing need for comparative studies, for a balanced narrative of the real Russia and the real India, and not merely Taj Mahal or some prominent monuments in the Russian side. Thank you so much for such a positive thought and presentation. Now, may I invite the third speaker, Professor Larissa Cheresneva, another very good friend of India and JNU. She has been a regular visitor to India, except for, I believe, this year because of Corona, or maybe last year too, because something had happened. But like I always say, that nothing lasts forever, not even Corona will last forever, and we will soon have friends from Russia visiting us. So Professor Larissa, may I request you to share your thoughts with us?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good evening, dear colleagues. Namaste. Really, Indology India is my love, is my life. Russia and India have a privileged strategic partnership. The initial phase of it began after the Second World War. In 1946, in this still dependent country, the interim government led by Nehru was formed. According to the plan of the Viceroy Mountbatten, the partition took place and India became independent on the 15th of August of 1947. The Communist Party of the Soviet Union and the Soviet state viewed the policies of India through the prism of ideology structured by Stalin, Molotov, Vyshinsky, but it did not stop the beginning of the diplomatic relations between the USSR and India in 1947. The first ambassador of India in Moscow became Lakshmi Pandit. In the letter of Lakshmi, which was published in Pravda on Indian Independence Day, the very first ID, she declared, "We feel a special bond with the Soviet Union, as both India and Russia have shown the ability to integrate and orchestrate different race and civilization." Orchestrate, what a word. The second ambassador was the subject of my scientific research, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, and I can't say many words about him, but all the same, I fully agree with the respected Ashok Mukherjee, with Professor Archana Upadhyay, that he had the meetings with Stalin, Vyshinsky, with the top leaders of the Soviet Union, and managed to find the right tune, arguments, manner for some constructive dialogue with the top Soviet leaders. The only foreign envoys who were permitted to meet Stalin during the last 2 or 3 years of his life were the Britishers and Americans. They represented the great powers, remembering about the Second World War. The general view in Moscow in regard to the ambassador Radhakrishnan's reception by Stalin was that it was a mark of his personal esteem, as well as a gesture of goodwill towards India and a recognition of her growing importance in Asian and world affairs. The USSR appreciated the role of Indian leaders in the United Nations organization towards China People's Republic in those years and the Korean War. It became obvious that in spite of all the differences, the USSR and India, like other independent and developing Asian countries, appeared to be natural partners. Nowadays, in the new post-Soviet time, the strategic cooperation between our two countries in the field of nuclear energy, in the field of medicine, immunology, for example, engineering, researchers of space and Arctics, military sphere, culture, and education is more than important. The other form, the Indo-Russian partnership between the regions, on the example of my own Lipetsk region, it took an active part in the industrialization of India, in the foundation of Bhilai, Bokaro, and many other industrial centers. Now we develop the scientific cooperation as we can and we want it. The scientific laboratory, my Oriental Studies Scientific Laboratory, uh, which was established in Lipetsk State Pedagogical Semyonov-Tianshansky University in 2002 and works under the guidance of my scientific advisor in those times and of mine nowadays, then cooperate with the Center of Indian Studies of the Institute of Oriental Studies of Russian Academy of Science. I thank greatly Professor Tatiana Lvovna Shaumyan and Professor Evgenia Yurievna Vanina, Then, with the Center of Russian and Central Asian Studies of GNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, thanks to the late Professor Arun Mohanty, to all the respected staff of the center, Professor Patnaik, Professor Mahapatra, Phul Badan, Achana Upadhyay. I thank Eurasian Foundation, personally Professor Sumant Swain and Namita Mahanti. Scientific work of mine in Delhi, contacts with the students of GNU and postgraduates in Moscow State University when they were there. All that proves the importance of the regional cooperation for us. For my young students and postgraduate students, it's a colossal experience. So in the end, I'd like to say that the consolidation of the two countries will not only strengthen the economic situation of Russia or India, but also increase their authority in the international arena and the people democratic, more democratic than we even can imagine, diplomacy, people diplomacy. So I thank Eurasian Foundation and GNU for your kind invitation. I wish you good luck and all the best. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Professor Larisa, for this historical account of the beginning of the diplomatic relationship between India and the Soviet Union. And what she spoke was based on her own archival research, and that makes it so special. The interaction and the conversation between Stalin and Radhakrishnan, which is already written, and it's soon going to come out in the form of a book. And she speaks about the natural partnership between the two countries, which eventually bloomed to what we see today as the strategic partnership, which she rightly says, it is not only about Russia and India, and the benefits are not just going to be mutual, but it's going to impact the globe, the larger world as such, in multiple ways. Thank you so much, Professor Larisa, for this very illuminating thoughts on a very important topic that actually impacts us all. Thank you so much. Now I invite the next speaker, Professor Ranjana Banerjee, the chairperson of the Center for Russian Studies, School of Languages, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Banerjee? Professor Banerjee, are you there? Suman, is she there?
I am here. I am here.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Professor Padhai. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Sumant and Namita ji for inviting me to participate in such a wonderful conference, which is being co-organized with Institute of Oriental Studies, Academy of Sciences, Moscow, where from I did my PhD. My regards to Professor Shaumian, Professor Banina, and all others from Institute of Oriental Studies. Being a student, scholar, and teacher of literature, I would like to talk about the bilateral ties from the standpoint of literature and culture. I would like to say, but in 1980s, when I went to Moscow to study, I was really touched by the warmth of the Russians, and especially moved by the expression Indo-Russia bhai bhai. And that compelled me to think why we don't hear such expressions in any other country. Though we get the warmth, but that sense of belonging, sense of being a part of their family, that we don't get to see or feel anywhere else. During my course of stay in Russia, my interaction with the Russians, and my acquaintance with Russian literature, culture, and history, I think we relate to each other we can bond with each other because we are product of the societies with similar socio-historical background. The societal fabric of India and Russia is diverse, pluralistic, with multiple languages and religion. We are open to adaptability. Where literature is concerned, all this reflects in literature. If we talk about the literature of 19th century, we all know, of course, I'm from Russian field, but those who are not from Russian field, they are well acquainted to the works of Chekhov, Tolstoy, Turgenev, Gorky, and others. Why is it only because the works are, as a piece of art, is very beautiful? I don't think so. I think because, other than the talent, of course, because we can relate to it, because we can relate to the problems which are placed in these works, because we went through similar kind of problems in the 19th century. For example, the theme of superfluous man, which comes in the transition period, the theme of bureaucracy, the theme of little man, the conflict between the radicals, the conservatives and liberal Westerners. These are the topics, and of course, reassessment of the role of women in the society, familial and arena and social arena. These problems were there in our society too, maybe at a little later stage, but it was there. That's why we could relate to it. That's why we could understand it. Similarly, if we talk about the Soviet period, maybe the Soviet period had its own characteristics, but still the socialist ideology had a huge impact on the youth of pre-independence and post-independence India. Because especially the work of Gorky, it became a voice against any kind of oppression. It became a voice against women's suppression. So some of these issues have lost their relevance, but some are still relevant. If we talk about late and post-Soviet Russia, the whole system changes with the introduction of perestroika, glasnost, and introduction of market economy. Around the same period, India also witnessed this LPG. And again, we face similar kind of problems, which are reflected in literature. As Professor Vanina said, it is very important to do comparative studies. Because of digital technology, it is very easy to connect to the Russian experts. Together, we can, and I am a student of comparative studies, of course, I always did, and I always felt that just talking about Russian literature, I cannot give anything. I have to talk about Indian also and see in a wider perspective, and that is how I can contribute. And that is what we should do. And quickly, I will say about the perception of India by Russians. India always was a subject of interest for the Russians right from 11th century when written literature started. We see it, it was the land of wonders, and it was, it was a romantic, they had a romantic image. Afanasyev Nikitin actually broke that with his visit to India, though there were a lot of myths in his work, but still this work really is very significant because it opened the gateway to India and gave a real image of India. After that, many stalwarts of Russia started talking about India, like Belinsky, Dobrolubov, Chernyshevsky, Zhukovsky, and many others. Yeah. In 19th century, we see that the image of India is developing in two forms, romantic and real. Romantic we see in the works of the poets, the writers, like Vsevolod Ivanov from 20th century and many others, and real image of India, there a big role was played by the Indo-Logists, right from Lebedev to Minaev to present-day Indo-Logists here, Professor Shaumian, Professor Vanina, and all are sitting here. So thanks to them that they really helped in developing the bilateral ties, and we would in future like to work together, and maybe it will help in seeing the problems in wider perspective. Though I know in the present time there's a decline in the interest in regional languages of India in Russia. That's what I heard, that now the youth, they are not that much interested in learning the regional languages. Only Hindi is very popular. Am I wrong in saying that? I'm not very sure, but that is what I heard. I hope it will again revive, because Hindu-Rusi, bhai bhai, it will always be, we will always have that kind of bond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Banerjee, for your nostalgic account of your experiences in Russia as a student and the societal connect that you talk about. And very interestingly, you have touched upon the pre-Soviet, Soviet, and the post-Soviet evolutionary process, not just in the literary field, but also in other fields. And I do agree with you that the deep emotional bond between our people is something that's not going to change.
Yeah, thank you.
May I invite the next speaker? I believe Professor Kalikov is here.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I invite him?
Yes.
Yeah. Professor Kalikov, may I invite you to share your thoughts with us and the other participants?
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this esteemed intellectual gathering of an NGO that I have the pleasure to witness in the making some 20 years ago, and which is in full intellectual and hopefully organizational strength now. Thank you very much. I will just share some thoughts of mine, since from what I have heard, most of memorable parts of the Russian-Indian interaction has been already touched upon. And once again, let me express my sympathy to the family of our and my personal big friend, Professor Arun Mohanty, to whom many of us are grateful and owe a lot. I think I should have said it. I had the pleasure to monitor developments in Russian-Indian relations for about 40 years now, in different capacities, working together with Professor Shaumian and Evgenia Vanina in Institute of Oriental Studies, and then participating quite actively and practically from 2003 to 2016 in a joint India-Russia intellectually based initiative, which was called World Public Forum Dialogue of Civilizations. Hopefully you remember that, and Professor Mohanty was a part of it, as hopefully some of you also. And I'm not an expert on India, so it's a kind of look from outside. So hopefully you will be interested in some thoughts of mine. I think it has been stressed already, but I should maintain it, that right from the very start of President Putin's first presidential term, both countries, in my humble opinion, started to rebuild what one might name as a special civilizational relations pattern. It's not a proper diplomatic term, however, but it is based on some deep and, as I see it, deepening knowledge of ancient roots of our peoples and cultures. which is of course a disputed issue, but there is always something below real politics or real economics consideration, as many experts agree to. The role of India and Russia in international relations traditionally coincide in what we consider to be the main purpose of international relations, which is peacekeeping and world preservation. I think we all of us agree on it. So in a way, it might be considered as relations between India and Russia as an axis of peace and knowledge in Eurasia, which we all not only live in, but are currently exploring more and more, both as our habitat or as Germans, or I work in Austria sometimes, so they call it Lebensraum, which is living space. As far as I know, there are at least several hundred people which have started to learn India during the years of World Public Forum there, that are still monitoring it, that have some interest in it, and they are working on it. So for us, I think for both Russians and Indians, it's a place, Eurasia is a place of our habitat and natural sphere of understanding. That's something I think we all not only inherit, but understand quite well. I think this kind of considerations or assumptions are deeply rooted in our country's strategic doctrines and worldviews. That's, if you read any of the statements of the current Russian president or anyone representing the government, this is a very solid point, and which is unshakable. And as a philosopher, I deliberately do not use the term picture of the world, because many say, well, we share the picture of the world, which is, in my view, quite a misleadingly assumption, because the author of this phrase, conservative German philosopher Martin Heidegger, saw it, the necessity to portray the world or to provide a picture of the world. He saw it as an invitation to war. So we don't share a picture of the world, that's for sure. But somehow we share our desire to see some things in the world that not only unite us, but possibly give us the solid ground. I think any political party in both countries, and let me hope political leaders of the last 20 years, at least acknowledge this as a cornerstone of their practical plans and deeds. Let me also point out some similarities in our country's society's discourses and prospects of its development. I think it has been said already, but I will just take another minute to stress it. Both societies historically tend to agree that the term elite does not mean what it usually means in politology or mass media discourses. I'm not talking about the wealthy ones. Many of them, in both cases, I think in both countries, seem to have left their countries for a supposedly better set of options and better future in other regions of the world. Being a late start economy, as Professor Andrei Volodin puts it, our elite first tried its chances abroad. And it was Western countries where many people tried their chances. And well, by the way, they have succeeded in many ways. Maybe something like this also happened in India, I'm not sure of it, which nevertheless succeeded in keeping its territorial integrity during the hardest times. While our elite, in politological sense, has lost it. without visible explanations, failing to modernize the public or state governance system, as we say it here, in the last years of USSR. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm not that conservative, and I'm not looking back to the USSR model or USSR 2.0, but the idea is that we lacked the late Soviet elite lacked the necessary quality of public or state governance. Many of us in late 80s knew that it would happen like it did happen. The problem for society is that it has lost self-respect, and this disintegration brought a very long felt trauma to both political elites and society, and we have to acknowledge it. I mean, it took about 30 years or 20 years up until we, many of us, experts and society members or people in the streets, have overcome the feeling of inferiority, which is not a complex, just a feeling. I think many outside observers has failed to acknowledge it, not the Indian ones, but Western. They told us that, guys, you will never rise again or something like that. But that's a false rhetoric. This is not about the West and the East. It's about the state of society, the mind of society. So hopefully we have overcame this trauma, not without, let's say, sometimes losing our minds to what one might say nationalism. Yes, of course, it never happens, you know, the middle way. It's Russia. It's a cold country, and we have to survive not only the, let's say, our thoughts and our minds, the weather, and the let's say some feelings that we inherit. However, in my view, I mean, that's personal, that the dissolution of the Soviet Union has successfully, let me put it in other words, the role of alternative center of power has been successfully overcame by the dissolution of the Soviet Union, since it never fitted the desires and aspirations of the vast majority of peoples living in it. I mean, there was no idea that we Russian culture or Russian society or Russian culture and society together with our friends is the only alternative to the so-called Western world. No, it's not like this, and it's we always knew it and felt it. So, having said this, let me just briefly propose some possible fields of interest, or let's say some possible fields of, one might say, cooperation. Let me just brief you that generally, although the interest in Russian society, and if you watch YouTube, Russian YouTube or a Russian segment of YouTube quite actively, is very much interested, I think the same happens in India, in its historic roots. It's not only about, Christianity, and it's not only about, let's say, are we Slavs or we are not Slavs? Are we Russians? What does that mean? We go deeper. And I have witnessed during last couple of years, I mean, I took my pension, so I had some additional time to monitor it. I personally have witnessed this growing interest, and millions of people trying to understand the roots of, let's say, their families, their cultures. This is not emotion. This is I haven't seen it when I was working for Russian Railways for so many years. We also monitor press and mass media and YouTube. So this is some kind of very important development in our society, and I'm sharing it with you. I think the same process goes in India, and but there is one funny thing. One can't find a good and well-written book about modern India in Russian stores. You can find lots of specific literature, and I read it with pleasure. But a person who will be standing next to me in, let's say, the famous bookstore for intellectual is Falanster here in Moscow. So you come there, you talk, and then we'll say, "Oh, you're looking for some Hindu literature." I said, "No, Indians are not Hindus." Why? And it sounds the same. Индийцы или индусы. I mean, you kind of joke about it, but there is no book that says, guys, there is Hindus, there is Hindutva, there are so many things that could be just properly explained. Maybe in schools, because in schools, my third child is quite young, so she's also looking for some simple and not misleading explanations. Some tables maybe, something like that. What is India? Oh, there are more than 100 nationalities, really. Southern India is not like Northern India. Oh, really? So these things are absolutely natural. You live in it, but most of us don't understand it. So if this knowledge kind of is shared only by professionals, it's nice, but not more than that. So in my view, some good book about modern India, maybe written together by Russian and Indian scholars, not in very diplomatic terms, but for those who are younger. We are those who witnessed Soviet Union and who kind of have some general ideas about globality or the otherness or whatever you say. We're living. What will be left to those who would like to follow us or to like just have some pure knowledge with our names on it. I mean, we verify and we testify that we know. So this is my very practical suggestion, and I'm absolutely sure that we will find the resources both in Delhi, in India, or we can find some resources here. It doesn't take long, and it doesn't need to be, that memorable edition. Just for daily use. In my view, I might be mistaken, but the quantity, not the quality, but the quantity of the public dialogue between two countries is also, I mean, I would say poor. And of course, it's a view from Moscow. Maybe I'm not right, and I'm not insisting on it. But that's a sphere where we could kind of work together. As I've said, the interest towards our national history, unbiased, not ideological, very natural, very sophisticated, might be considered as a basis for some, I don't know, collective monograph written both by Russian and Indian scientists for those who really would like to specialize in this. Are there really some roots? I mean, we'd love to see them, but God knows whether there are some. But I mean, that's a simple thing. But people are not that. They don't spare too much time on knowledge. But possibly this.
Could you just wind up in a minute or two, because we'll have to go to the next speaker?
My last remark is that if this, I'm working in socio-economic research for 4 years. Right. We don't know the duration of the global crisis that we are facing. Some say it's economic, some say it's financial economic side, some say it's system, let's say global a capitalist system crisis, whoever knows. So in my view, we could share the strategies and the experience of how we practically overcome it, not theory. That's also a field of common interest. Thank you very much, and so sorry for being that, let's say.
Thank you so much, Professor Kalikov, and I quite appreciate the fact that you have highlighted some very important aspects of the developments that have taken place in recent times and the way you look at it, particularly when you say from the first term of Putin, there has been this focus on building the civilizational aspects of the relationship between India and Russia. You very rightly pointed out that though the worldviews may vary on several counts, but there's certainly a common desire on both sides to see certain aspects of the world ordering that ought to be altered. At the societal level, you talk about the societal trauma, the loss of self-respect, and also the role of elite in both the countries, and how you feel that perhaps the Indians have fared better in certain aspects. And most importantly, when you speak about this whole thing of cooperation between the two sides and the whole idea of coming up with a book or a monograph, particularly keeping in mind the view that for both countries, the historical roots of their societies are very, very important. And since it's important, it becomes all the more necessary to ensure that our young people are encouraged to do research in relevant areas where perhaps we could understand in a much more better way the special civilizational bonding that you are trying to say, which Russia under Putin is trying to focus on, especially when it comes to Russia's relationship with India. Thank you so much for your illuminating thoughts. In fact, you've provided us with food for thought, and we would actually think on those lines of coming up with some good book or a monograph. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sumant, do I need to request, you have sent a message, Tatiana, Professor Tatiana to speak?
Yes, yes, ma'am. To your kind consideration, ma'am.
Yeah, please. Professor Tatiana, we'll be very much eager to listen to your remarks. Is she there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, please.
Ma'am, on mute, please.
Yes. Now, yes. Thank you very much. I would like, first of all, again and again to express my gratitude to the invitation to participate in so new, I think, meeting. This is new conference, a new format of that, because it was really very important to combine the young generations of Indian students, postgraduate students, young scholars with the Russian. And I think that is very important that in this meeting participated not only the representatives of the New Delhi and Moscow. I think that it is very important that another people have been invited. And I tried to counter, I think that at least 10 places had been represented here. And this is in Delhi, in Calcutta, in Kerala, and at the same time from Lipetsk, and our colleagues with whom we always had very close relationship, and with Mumbai and with Chennai, that is really represent this seminar, this conference was represented by the different people, different generation, and different, specialization of that. And that is, I think that's really very important. And I also would like to mention that the subjects of our participants, which we were discussing, it was also a very wide range of this, from the very important, I can understand, strategic partnership, all these things are of course very important. But at the same time, some relationship with China, right, it was also mentioned there. The problems of health, Now in the COVID situation, it is becoming more and more important for all of us, you know, from that it became the global problem now. I'm sorry to say this, but I'm afraid that this is that. We were talking about the great sons of India, Mr. Radhakrishnan, Maulana Azad, and so. We were talking about the political relationship. We were talking about the trade and scientific cooperation, and, for example, Indo-Russia studies in Russia, which had been very detailed, mentioned by our colleagues. And I think that I'm very happy that our Center for Indian Studies was very well represented, because it was at least 3 young generation people, Dr. Zakharov, Mr. Rabei, and Alexander Kozlova, and our important, you know, very well-known scholar Evgenia Vanina. I think that at least 5 people from Center for Indian Studies had participated in this meeting. And I was happy to see the our Indian colleagues, our Indian, with whom we have very good relationship, who has very good contact with them traditionally. And we saw a lot of young generation people. And I am absolutely sure that we should continue such kind of things.
Yeah.
And we should continue our contacts. And we should continue to invite our Indian colleagues to Russia, different places of Russia. And I hope that our Indian colleagues will organize the invitation from our scientific center, for our students, for our, you know, the people who, you know, here we saw the future of our countries, future of our science, future of our contacts. And I think that our task is very important to continue these contacts. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Mohanty. I'm happy, very happy to see you here. And Simon Swine, I already mentioned that when I met him for the first time, he was postgraduate student of Arun. And now I congratulate you that you are
so
kind of.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Now I would request the last speaker, the director of the Russian Center for Science and Culture, Mr. Fedor Rozovsky, to kindly share his thoughts.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Achana Upadhyaya, our chair of today's valedictory session. I had a chance to speak on the inaugural session, so my speech will be much more than vote of thanks, than a speech by a speaker, which we heard today from Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, Professor Vladimir Kulikov, Evgenia Vanina, and Larissa Chereshneva, Professor Rajana Banerjee. I'm really happy that Dr. Shumyan made a thought-provoking analysis of this conference, and I have nothing to add after my Guruji. For your information, during 7 years I was working in the Institute of Oriental Studies just after the graduation from Moscow University, and my classmate was, how can you guess, Professor Vanina. So we are friends more than 40 years, all of us, including Professor Kulikov and Shumyan, who is really for all of us, I mean, Vanina, Kulikov, and Rozovsky, a Guruji, Amaji. So really, for me, it's a big pleasure and honor to be a part of this fantastic conference, 3 days conference. It's a really unique thing to organize with participation of more than 10 educational and research institutions from India and Russia. And first of all, my hearty thanks goes to Namita Mohanty ji and to Suman Swain ji for excellent organization of this event. Definitely, it was a big pleasure for us to listen to the scholars, eminent scholars like I mentioned, and to young scholars from Institute of Oriental Studies, and definitely many other universities and educational centers and research centers who participate in this event made this event a big success. At the end, I just want to confirm the commitment of Россотрудничества to help youth of Russia and India to communicate with each other on the platform of our 5 cultural centers in India, as well as on other platforms like a new generation program by Russian president, youth parliaments, BRICS events framework, etc. We are ready and we continue this work. And I hope that the young scholars could put their participation in these events and do the needful, do a lot of good things, how to develop our strategic partnership in the field of humanitarian and scientific and cultural ties. And last but not the least, I would like to thank the COVID pandemic, who made it possible to unite us all on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. In my experience, it's absolutely unbelievable that during 16 years I am sitting with my staff people, my young colleagues, I am not alone here, in this hall and watching with other almost 60 people on the TV and computer screen and enjoying this. Let's continue until COVID will not go. Once again, thank you very much. All the best to you. Stay safe, stay blessed. Namaskar, Dhanyavad, Shabratri.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So finally, I give my concluding remarks before I invite the director of the Eurasian Foundation, Mrs. Mohanty, to give her vote of thanks. Well, I'm thankful to all the distinguished speakers for sharing their profound thoughts and perspectives on issues of common concerns impacting both our countries, India and Russia. I'm also thankful to all the participants, particularly my young friends, for their proactive participation and patience as we have witnessed in the last 3 days. This has been remarkable. And I'm personally so happy to be interacting with some of my very, very dear friends. Though we are, so far off in different continents, but the truth is that thanks to technology, we are so close, not just in the mode of communication, but also in sharing our thoughts and emotions when we say, as Vanina ji said, that both India and Russia need each other. It is such a powerful thought, and I feel that it's on this thought that we should conclude this conference. Thank you so much, especially the organizers, for giving me the opportunity to chair this session and interact with this wonderful set of people. May I now request Mrs. Namita Mohanty, the director of the Eurasian Foundation, to give her vote of thanks. Suman?
Yes,
Am I there?
Yeah. Yes,
hello.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Can I audible to everyone?
Yes,
sure.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As we conclude today the 3 days event of Indo-Russian Young Scholar International E-Conference 2020, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the speakers for joining the valedictory session. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Center for Indian Studies, Institute of Oriental Studies, Russian Academy of Science, Moscow, Russia, and Russian Center of Science and Culture, New Delhi, India, for their kind collaboration with Eurasian Foundation, organizing and this wonderful e-conference 20 as a successful event. Now, we would like to extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the speakers for gracing the event and sharing their important thoughts and views with us. Thank you all. We are very much thankful to Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, His Excellency Ambassador, for sharing his vast knowledge and giving his precious time to us. Thank you so much, sir. We would like to express our sincere thanks to Professor Vladimir Kulikov, expert Russian international affairs, who has given his valuable time and also who has shared his very informative thoughts with us today. Thank you very much, Professor Kulikov. We'd also like to thank Professor Archana Upadhyay, ma'am, from JNU, who has agreed for kindly agreeing to chair the session today. It was a wonderful session, and she has shared her very valuable informative views with us. Thank you, Archana ma'am. We would like to also express our gratitude to Professor Evgenia Vanina from Institute of Oriental Studies, Russian Academy of Science, and Professor Tatiana Shomina from the Institute of Oriental Studies, Academy of Science. Thank you both, madams, for your very nice, vast knowledge which you have shared with us. One remark I will say, like Professor Vanina ma'am, when she said bye-bye relationship, I hope it will continue through these young participants for a better relationship among these two countries. And this will be the real tribute to Professor Mohanty, who has established the foundation to grow this thing. Now, we also extend our sincere thanks to Professor Larissa Cherysnova from Leipzig State Pedagogical University for her vast information, knowledge, which she has shared with us today, and she has given her time. So thank you, ma'am. We'd also like to acknowledge our gratitude to Professor Ranjana Banerjee, ma'am, from the Center of Russian Studies, JNU, who helps a close bond with us through her language, through her cultural speech, and she has spent a very valuable time with us. So thank you, Ranjana ma'am. Well, we also very thankful, grateful to Mr. Fedor Rozhovsky, the director for Russian Science and Cultural Center from Delhi, who has helped us to make this event a grand success, and who has shared his values, his information with us. Thank you, Professor Rozhovsky, sir. Now, I believe everybody will agree with me. We all are inspired by the great thoughts of our distinguished speakers. Thank you all. Now, lastly, I would like to thank all the young scholars who has participated in this international conference, who have shared their great thought and views for the future relationship between these two great countries. Lastly, but not the least, I'm also thankful to Dr. Suman, Dr. Subrat, Dr. Nihar Ranjan, who have coordinated, who have organized this wonderful conference. And again, I want to thank, we are all happy. We are very much thankful, grateful to all the academicians, to all the distinguished guests, dignitaries, and everybody. Once again, thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. With this speech, we are going to end the session. Hopefully, we will meet soon some other programs. Professor Mukherjee has given a word thanks to Archana ma'am. He has actually some appointments somewhere. He just left the early and given word thanks to you for chairing this session.
Yes.
So nice of you, ma'am.
Thank you all. It's really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We will interact anymore in many